Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Mat Chat, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined today by six-time world champion and our newest team member at 76 kilograms, Adeline Gray, and her coach and the USA Wrestling Coach of the Year, Nate Engel. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
For sure. Nate, you're an old pro at this. So Adeline, you've won so much, but this path this year seems different. I mean, it obviously is different. We watched, those of us that are watched the US Open, a World Team Trials, and Final X, and you literally look like three different human beings out there, frankly. And, but again, like I said to you off the air, we have no idea what that's like. So I don't know how to ask this delicately, so I'll just ask you, what is it like to have twins and then recover, and how many weeks can you start doing whatever? You obviously can't really be worried about your weight, I would think, while you're pregnant. Just walk us idiot men through this process, please.
You say men, but honestly, there's a lot of women out there that haven't had kids either. So I was very naive to this process as well. And it's just, first of all, it's incredible what the human body can do. It is amazing that I was able to grow two full human beings and then push them out and feed them. But there's also a big toll on the female body that goes through major changes. I fluctuated about 52 pounds throughout the pregnancy, which was right around what I was supposed to do. And it was interesting because I really thought that I was going to be able to, because I'm a heavyweight, so I try to eat and stay big enough for my weight class. And I thought I was finally, when I finished wrestling at the end of the World Championships, was like, cool, I don't have to do the extra protein shakes. I don't have to be taking in these extra calories and force myself to be so full all the time. And then when I found out I was having twins, they were like, we need to make sure you're eating enough. You have to gain enough weight. And I was like, oh, this feels just like wrestling. And then as my belly grew and my body started to change, there were some aches and pains that kind of happened. I was like, this kind of feels just like wrestling. And I just kept having these moments where I was like, I feel like my wrestling career has just prepared me to prepare my body to do this thing that's very amazing and natural and part of a progression that I wanted for my life. And so throughout the pregnancy, I was still able to lift. I was still trying to eat as much as I could to try to make sure that my babies were big and wonderful. And they were both around 7 pounds at 38 weeks. So it was a healthy, wonderful pregnancy. Birth is traumatic and a different experience, I think, for everyone. And it was something that something that took some time to understand what happened and how everything went. And luckily the babies came out and were healthy and beautiful. I had some complications that ended up just taking me a little bit more time. I mean, I think we all hear this 6-week number that you can get cleared to go back to activity and things, but mine was more like 6 months of sitting and resting and healing. And I had some just body that had to rest. And that was, I think, one of the hardest things was I had these little beings that I was taking care of and nourishing and feeding around the clock and not sleeping. And so the best thing you can do for recovery is rest. And these little monsters do not let you sleep ever. So, and Nate has twins, so he remembers those sleepless nights of every 2 hours waking up and bringing a baby and just kind of feeling like, oh, will you please just sleep a little longer? So that was, I think, a really big challenge, is that I couldn't tap into those same recovery skills because I wasn't getting the quality rest that I had. And so when I did start training in January, it was slow, and it was very interesting to see how the body had changed and started to adapt. But it happened fast. So I remember trying a few things, and then 2 or 3 days later, I was like, oh, those things are easier. And I couldn't do them 2 or 3 days ago. And so it just took some time to adjust and to kind of feel my body. And as I got cleared for more and more, I got cleared about 5 days before the US Open to be able to do some more extension things and twisting. I was still pretty limited on a lot of the exercises that I was holding back, and I was still having some pain. And it just, I knew, and I know, Nate and I had some frank conversations about the fact that I didn't think I was ready for the US Open. And so when I went out there and had a loss and didn't, shine like the 6-time world champ that we usually see out on the mat, it didn't hurt my ego. It didn't hurt my feelings, I think, as much as people were starting to create this narrative of like, oh, her time has passed. You see these young people coming up, you saw kind of the talk on Twitter, and it just, it didn't bother me as much as I thought it was going to, just because I knew that every 3 weeks, things were just getting so much better. My body was moving, my stance was getting lower, and it was kind of fun to make those big jumps, because I would get taken down 5 or 6 times by some of the young athletes, and then the next week come back and be like, oh yeah, I know how to sprawl. Like, I remember how to move my feet. And so some of those things just have to kind of click back into play. And they did. I still feel like I'm only at about 60% physically, and still have a lot of demands outside of wrestling that is creating an environment that's a little bit more challenging to be a selfish athlete. And so I'm finding that balance. And luckily, Coach Nate and his wife have that family and have helped me kind of understand and know that we can do both, and we can find out ways to still improve and get on the mat and get what we need, but also still dedicate that time and energy to the family. And a lot of it's asking for help, and a lot of it's putting the work in when you can.
I want to come back to you with a serious question, but I have one question for Nate. So, Nate, you've coached a long time. I coached junior college. Roden coached junior college. Have you ever had an athlete show up 52 pounds over?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe one time when I was at Missouri Valley, but no, that was a first.
I had to tell the Final X, because I had the sit-out spot because I won the world championships the year before. So I had to deny my sit-out spot because I couldn't make weight. And I sent the email being like, I'm 48 pounds overweight. I will not be there due to that situation that I'm in. And so
normally that would be a case of incredibly bad discipline. so you mentioned
a case of great discipline.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple things that I wanted to make sure I followed up on. Number one was you had talked before all the pregnancy stuff that you were eating a lot. What do you normally walk at? What's your normal walk around weight?
I don't know, because I spend so much time and energy eating and lifting and trying to make sure that I stay big and strong enough for this weight class, that I'm not sure what I haven't taken really enough time off. The only time that I've really had off in the last 10 years has been for a shoulder surgery and a knee surgery. So during those times, my weight drops probably 5 or 6 kilos. I would say I'm closer to that 72 kilo weight class, is where naturally I think my body would sit. But I'm not really sure, because I do a pretty good job staying consistent with my eating. And even through my pregnancy, it kind of didn't change. I was still eating a lot and making sure to continue to lift. I was able to lift about 3 or 4 days a week throughout my whole pregnancy. I lifted the day before I had birth or gave birth. So it was good. I think a very healthy pregnancy for me, and was able to tap into those skill sets I learned wrestling to make my body feel better and create these healthy little humans that came out.
So when you show up like morning of weigh-ins, you're usually like, you're not cutting a kilo or two. You're usually like pretty much right there.
So the weight class is 76, and then some of the tournaments are +2, so 78 kilos. So I'm usually never cutting for that 78 kilo, but my ideal walk around weight when training is about, I want to be like after dinner about 78.5, 79. And if I can see 80, that's like the goal weight, right? Like, I want to be,
okay. All right.
When 80 is like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm big and wonderful and strong. And then you get to cut out some of the sugar and start to feel like that taper, truly kind of get that body running and feeling good. But realistically, I bounce between about 77, 78 kilos is about normal before world championships and stuff. So I usually am cutting. I have like a smaller meal for a few days, and that weight kind of comes off pretty easy. But really just the night before, Nate and I kind of game plan either adjusting the meal or, a sauna or warm tub kind of weight cut. And we just kind of cut that last kilo pretty easily, and it comes off very easily for me.
Nice. So Nate, I know how organized you are. You and I have talked over the years about organization when it comes to recruiting and training cycles and all these things. You probably live in Excel and Google Sheets like I do. So when you have somebody that you're coaching that's obviously usually successful, and you have a cycle that's worked. I mean, like Adeline, I looked up your Wikipedia and it's incredibly impressive. I mean, I knew what you'd won, but just to look at, I guess to see it visually is a whole different thing. So Nate, when you go, okay, well, we got to throw all that out the window now for the most part. Like, I'm not a person that's great at change. So I don't want to put that on, but I mean, how adaptable did you have to be and what kind of changes did you guys do together?
Yeah, I mean, really, it was just more so like talking a lot on the phone. I mean, obviously, when she was going through pregnancy, I always joked that like I transferred all the coaching to my wife, Michaela. But during, once she had the babies, it was more so just talking on the phone a lot, talking to Terry, because Terry's been around her whole career. And then just, hey, the doctor tells me this is what I can do. How do we change that? And just staying positive through the whole thing, because I think there's one thing that I know Adeline loves to do, and that's to lift. Amongst winning and everything else, and being a mom now. But so she was getting her listen, and she has a great strength coach that she works with, and just more so like trying to stay positive to help her through, like when the doctor or somebody says like, hey, you can't do this, and it's she's wrestled her whole life, and when all of a sudden your body changes and you want to come back faster but you can't, it's just staying through the process. And that was really leading up to the US Open. As Adeline said, she really had been training for about a good 3 weeks leading up to the Open. And it was more so, let's not worry about the result. If you win it, great. If you don't, we'll get back to the. So reminded her, I mean, there's one thing that she's really, really good at, and that's winning, right? There's a reason why she's a 6-time world champ, Olympic silver medalist. And I said, it really came down in her semifinal match. She was down in the 30-second break, and she usually likes to say like, hey, give me 2 things and that's it, and give her a water and tell her off. And she goes back. And I just looked at her and said, hey, you're Adeline Gray, and something you do great is winning. And she went out there and figured it out, So then leading up to trials, same thing. It was like, okay, 3 weeks, what do we have to work on? Okay, we'll work on these 3 things and then we'll be ready for trials. And she did that perfectly. And then 3 weeks leading up to Final X against Kennedy, and same thing. Here's the 3 things we need a game plan for. And now that she has more time, right? She's going to be having camps and all that stuff. And but I mean, really, it's just continued conversation of, hey, maybe she's having trouble with this part of her body. Okay, we just scale back a little bit. She lifts hard and then gets back to wrestling. And she's, one thing I've learned as a coach from anybody, and Adeline is the most I've ever learned as a coach is through her, is like, listen to your body. I think in the old days we had coaches that said run through a wall, and it was like, okay, I'm going to run through this wall every single day, 365 days a year. But if you don't listen to your body, you have injuries. And I think our sport's changed a lot, but that's one thing I've really learned is when she says, hey, I don't think I can do this today. All right, hey, let's lift, let's ride the bike, let's just drill a little bit. And then her body's going to start to recover, and then she's good to go. So sorry, that was a long-winded answer for that, but.
Well, no one's watching this to listen to me talk, so that's beautiful. And I think like for you to be able to do that with an athlete, you have to trust A, that they're telling you the truth, and B, they have to prove to you that they work hard when they are healthy, because otherwise we've all coached or been around athletes that are something's always wrong. Like my dad used to call them chicken bites. They always got chicken bites wrong with them. And it's like, well, sometimes you do just got to go. At times. So Adeline, I was fascinated by the US Open, the match in the semis that Nate's talking about, where you're losing and then you get the 3 1-1s and then win. And then, the finals don't go your way. When you get done with those and okay, I'm going to have to wrestle everybody but Blades in the mini tournament or trials, whatever the right term is. Are you a person that watches film? Or does you have other people watch it and just say, look, I just want to focus. You tell me what you think I need to do and I'll tweak. What's your process there, Adeline?
I rely a little bit more on the coach's eye to watch that film and kind of detail out. And then there's a few matches that we'll watch. So I would say if Nate's watching 10 or 12 matches, I watch 2 or 3 and we just kind of go through a few of those positions. And then it's more on the mat. We got someone tall and lanky and had that feel of dealing with that extra bit of length. There's a couple moves that make it a little bit riskier when someone's skinny and has a little bit more leverage. So I just kind of felt that position and adjusted what my lock kind of felt like. And it ended up working out in my favor during those matches. So I think we do a little bit more physical pieces, and just taking a little bit from that film to remind ourselves that body types do matter in wrestling, and we have to make those adjustments when someone does have an exaggerated difference like height or strength.
So, like, for example, if it position X against Blades or Guilford or whoever the case may be, like, you guys, somebody will watch it, figure out, and then you literally just go out on the mat and say, okay, when we're here, hey, this didn't work. I think one of these 2 or 3 things will work. Which one do you like the best, Adeline? And then sort of put that on the hard drive. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, and I mean, I do watch a couple matches too, so I do recognize the fact that they have a quick shot, just kind of more identifying what their skill sets are, and then reminding myself to move my feet, and some of those things we all learn when we're 6 years old, like let me keep my head up, move my feet, and make sure I sprawl when they kind of step back, and I think most wrestlers have kind of a tell before they shoot or a setup that they go to over and over again, and so just kind of feeling that position so it's not a shock when all of a sudden they're in deep. That you felt that before kind of in practice.
And I would say too, like something that she does really, really well, and the other female athletes that I work with here is she visualizes like a lot. And, you know, I don't want to tell all of her secrets, but I mean, we had a Zoom call. We did some visualizing stuff, and almost to a T is how those 2 matches went, you know, from the way she visualized. And I mean, she's a professional athlete. She's been one for the majority of her life. And so the way she's able to think in her mind too, and then go do it in a match, a real match, is like truly unbelievable. I've never seen something like it.
I don't know if I put myself down 5-0 at any point in the visualization, but I think the end results ended up the same.
5-0 and 52 pounds over. That's a deep hole in that for sure. So, tell me about your sister Geneva and her role in your process and success, because, you know, I think we all see her there, but, you know, like I have a brother, we're 14 months apart, so I know what it's like to be close, but you guys are obviously doing it at the highest level.
Yeah, no, I've been so blessed that she has gotten back into the wrestling world. So we wrestled together in high school and through our whole lives, really. We both started when we were 6 and 8, kind of in that range. But she was always a lot smaller than me. So when she got out of high school and got big and strong, there's not a lot of women who have the size that I need in our country. And so the women that do are training or breaking their ankles, whatever the situation is, but to get a training partner sometimes is kind of hard. And so when she was available, she's been training these young athletes. She's a personal coach, and the Team USA Utah or Team National the Utah. She has the position at USA Wrestling Utah for the state directors, but her position is there, and she's doing a lot of great things out there to coach young women. And so she's staying in shape and being able to be a great training partner. And so when she came out, I was like, hey, can I have you gain a little bit of weight and make sure that you're strong enough and big enough for me to hit over and over again? And then wrestling's a very give and take sport. And when you get to the highest level and you've been doing this for 3 quads, 4 quads now, it takes a wear and tear on your body. And so the fact that I can take her down 5 times and then rest, and then take her down 5 more times and then rest, I think has created some longevity. It's created some explosiveness and some drilling that I think, some habits that I think are bad that athletes learn. Like if someone touches your single leg and you let them do it because you're drilling, and you learn that every time someone touches my single leg, I'm defending it because I only do the defense part. And so I think some of those habits have made it so I've been able to do a lot more work without the wear and tear on my body. And so she's been so precious to have around for that. And she also braids my hair, and she takes me to all my lifts and drives me to practice. And so she lived with me during the pandemic and was able to be my training partner. And Coach Nate would get on Zoom and yell at us as we're dancing stance and motion in the yard and doing everything we can to stay in shape during that time. And now with her being in Utah, we just kind of fly her out for certain camps and for certain tournaments. And I've been very thankful that her job has made her available to be able to be my training partner. And I'll take her to Normandy and hopefully on to Paris after Belgrade.
That's fascinating, everything you said, but the one specific side of it, and I'm sure when Nate first got involved in it, it's so different, right? Like if Nate and I are the same size, like you're supposed to be a good drill partner, whether it's 2 and 2, 3 and 3, minute, however your coach is designed, you know, but if it's like, hey, sweep singles for a minute, or even, hey, here are 3 best takedowns, he's going to take me down 3 or 4 times. I'm going to take him 3 or 4 times. And if I'm not letting him do that, I'm actually being a poor drill partner or vice versa. And I'm sure you realize what you're doing is unique, because almost everywhere else in the world, it's the 3-and-3 method. And so Nate, when you're coaching that, like, that's got to be interesting, right? Because like, it's, normally you're like, okay, like you're coaching me and Adeline as an example, and you're helping us both out, or, one of the other athletes out there that's with her. But it's literally like coach, rest, like, hey, we're going to work on head inside snatch single to the right side 5 times. Okay. Hey, your grip needs to be a little higher or lower. You're bending at your neck instead of bending at your hips. And that's got to be a different situation to coach, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's different, but it's also nice because then all the eyes are on Adeline, and because she's been wrestling for so long, and I mean, she's 32 years old, right? Your body takes wear and tear. Like she said, she's had 2 surgeries. She's given birth. Like, she's done a lot more than a lot of obviously males, but females have done in their career. And so it's been nice to kind of keep that career going longer than most people. But Geneva's been so great for so many reasons. One, in the corner, she keeps me calm and collected, because I get like inside, like sometimes Adeline gives me heart attacks in a few of her matches lately. And I joke around and I tell Geneva, like, we got to tell Adeline to quit doing this because my kids are going to grow up without a father, and Geneva's unborn kids are going to grow up without a father. So, but yeah, as far as practice goes, and the other thing too, Geneva, she keeps it really like light-hearted. So, they're laughing, they're joking around. I remember one time I looked at Terry, the first time I was at camp with both of them, and it was like the first practice, and they're laughing, having a good time. And I'm so used to, like, when I was an athlete, like, it's serious, but it keeps like the fun in it. And I think, for Adeline, that's important because she's been at it for so long that you got to remember your why, and to have Geneva around and to like have her best friend when practice is not going, and they go on walks and they do stuff. And obviously there's some time that she probably separates from her sister and from me and gets her own time. But yeah, it's just a unique relationship. And we're obviously super grateful that Geneva is able to kind of put her job on hold for sometimes for camps and for tournaments. And like Adeline said, there's not a lot of people that can give her that feel. And, luckily she's got the same genes that Adeline has as far as body type. And it's just, yeah, it's awesome. And, Geneva deserves a lot of credit for everything she does, because it's hard to put your life on hold and just say, hey, I'm going to go do this because I love my sister. And, and she does an amazing job.
Yeah, I'm glad we're
Kyle Snyder's brother is kind of the same person. His brother is my Geneva kind of thing. And Kyle and I drilled at one of the camps in Colorado Springs, and Geneva and his brother, what's his brother's name again? Kevin.
Yep.
And so Geneva and Kevin were drilling, and Kyle and I were drilling, and Geneva was like, I'm just here as like a training partner. You can do whatever you want. He's like, I'm just here as a training partner. And he didn't know that she was my sister, and Geneva didn't know that he was their brother, and they realized that they were literally the same person. So it is unique, but I do think that's kind of one of the jumps that is made once you are an elite athlete. There is this time period before world championships that's really beautiful, that you get to just focus on yourself. You get to focus on what's making huge improvements and minor tweaks, and you get to not do as much damage to the body, and you don't have to be as good of a teammate or a drill partner all the time. And then when you wrestle another world team member, you fall right back into that method of 2-and-2 or 3-and-3. So it's not all the time that you're getting that full focus and attention, but you do end up in situations that you can make a little bit more work out of the same time period.
For sure. I'm a numbers guy, so I don't know if you can put numbers on this, but I'm very curious. If you're at 100% is like when you're winning a world title, what percentage were you at US Open? What percentage were you at trials? And what percentage were you at Final X?
I'd say right now I'm just over 60. I feel physically like I'm still finding things that are new. Like Katie Kriebel keeps running our and I keep thinking like, I haven't done this yet in 2 years. Like, this is crazy. And so even just basic stuff like a forward roll, or I still haven't done a handspring yet. Like I just accomplished a cartwheel. I'm like, okay, these are feels like baby steps. And anybody who's done a wrestling warm up knows that there's a lot of agility and athleticism that has to come up during those warm ups. And sometimes wrestling's easier than some of those wrestling warm-ups that we put through, especially what Nate remembers from Yvonne. I remember watching those practices and just being like, what are you guys doing? This is like a full gymnastics practice. But right now I'm at 60. I don't know if I have a number for at nationals. I still feel like I wasn't fully sleeping yet. I still feel like there was a lot of fogginess and some extra family stuff that was kind of going on. I had my tooth fall out at the morning of. It was just like nationals was messy. And I think sometimes when you come back to wrestling, you're kind of unsure and you make the decision, and then all of a sudden the world tests you. It's like I had a situation where a woman from Ukraine dislocated my kneecap back in 2010. And then the next year when I was coming back, I was at the same like World Cup tournament. And I was like, okay, I really just don't want to wrestle her. And so I was at a higher weight. She was at a lower weight. And then we were on separate sides of the bracket. And it just, long story short, we ended up wrestling each other at the end of the tournament. And at the very beginning, I was like, oh, thank goodness, we're not going to have to wrestle each other. We're different weights, opposite sides. Team USA ended up in the 7th and 8th place match, which we had never really been in.
Right.
And we ended up, her teammate got hurt. They bumped her up to my weight and we had to wrestle. And I was so scared, but it really taught me that karma and just the universe, sometimes if you put it too much out there, ends up happening. And that's kind of how I felt at nationals, is I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to have this be an easy tournament and, make it to the final X so I can have a couple weeks to train. We're moving. My husband's going to be gone for 2 weeks. It was just kind of a lot of pressure that I put on the US Open, and Nate tried his best to make it a looser tournament, to just kind of have a result that was a test to see where we were at. And I unfortunately, had a good tournament, but not a great tournament. And got teched in the finals, which was kind of new for me. Hadn't done that maybe
kind of new. I would say, yeah, I'd say very new. Yeah.
I don't think I've gotten teched since the rules changed, when it was like that, when the two
periods.
The two different periods, where it was like if you got the 2 3-point throws, kind of like those old school rules. So it's been a minute since I've gotten kind of squashed on a mat like that. So Kennedy's explosive and has some great offense, and I had to make some big jumps, and luckily I was able to make them.
Yeah. Nate mentioned your why, people finding their why. I heard that a ton at the NCAAs. I'm hearing that more and more. So, one of the things, Adeline, that I'll be honest, when I first saw it, it was like too good to be true. You celebrate after every win. Mm-hmm. And that's like very unusual. I mean, I'm sure you know that, right? Like there's other people that just walk off, or, they celebrate if they win in the finals. But you celebrate, and I don't mean like you're dancing on anybody, but like if you've beaten me 6 times and then you wrestle me the 7th time and beat me, you still celebrate. Is that sort of you just reminding yourself how much joy you have for the sport? Is that coming from a different area? Like, tell us about that.
I think it's some gratitude that I was able to be healthy enough and experienced enough and kind of just enough to go out there and shine and be able to come out with another win. And those wins are special. I think every time we have a loss, we realize how hurt you feel from them, like they haunt you for such a long time. And so I do think we need to take moments and celebrate those little wins. And I think that might even come down to some basic practices that I do here at the training center, when it's like some days you have to celebrate the fact that you brush your teeth twice because the day didn't really go the way you wanted it to. And so celebrating those little wins, sometimes you have to go kind of small. So even if it's an athlete that came out and didn't wrestle their best, or there's somebody who you just have a lot more experience with, like maybe it is somebody I've beaten 7 times, but they still went out there and gave me their best because they have nothing to lose at that point. And
right.
I think when you're in the position like Jordan, whoever beats you is going to get the USA Wrestler of the Week. So you get the best version of people who have nothing to lose and are just throwing everything at the wall to try to see if they can beat you. And so you still get to celebrate the fact that you were able to take someone's best and be excited about that win. And I raise my hands, and I'm excited that people are watching women's wrestling, I'm excited that they're excited about my work and my effort, and having that translate to W's is a wonderful experience. And you get to feel like you're a world champ again. You know, every little match moves you a little bit closer to refining your wrestling and getting back on top of the world.
Yeah.
And I think too, like we talked about this the other day when I was in Colorado, is, I mean, obviously her gratitude and the fact now that there's a bigger picture, right? Like she, obviously it's her legacy and that's, you know, been for a long time, but the fact that it doesn't matter how her day goes at practice or at a tournament, when she comes home from practice or from a match, win, lose, or draw, she's got these two amazing human beings that they don't care about her wrestling career right now, and they may never care about it, but their mom's coming home, and like you have to change that mind the moment you get home, no matter how good or bad the day was. Like I have to walk in, I have to be ready to be a mom or a dad or, you know, whomever, and take care of these kids, because they still got to eat, you still got to change diapers, you still have to do all that. And I mean, I think that's what's remarkable, to be able to balance all that stuff. I'm just a coach. I have a wonderful wife that, you know, takes care of my kids and a lot more than I do. And so I think for an athlete like Adeline, this story, this legacy that she's writing, obviously being a 6-time world champ, but now being a mother to two, as she always says, her beautiful children, like that right there speaks, you know, whatever the story is, the world championships, the Olympics, you know, I don't want to look too far ahead, but that's the part that people need to take away from this, is that legacy and that her being a mother, and that it's not about the wins and losses all the time. It's like coming home and having to balance everything.
Yeah, I think for those of us that are so used to, I don't want to, if I'm saying this to you, Adeline, you or third person Nate, Adeline winning so much, that, you know, like we said at the beginning, men have no idea how I mean, like if you're married and somebody has a kid, you just generally try to be supportive. You have no idea what the hell it really feels like, you know, like you just go run the errands you're supposed to and try not to add to that person's, you know, discomfort. And so to see somebody come out on the other side of it, and like you said, Adeline, you're maybe 60% now. I mean, that feels like you're probably maybe 30 or 40% at the first tournament, 40 or 50 at the second one, 50 or 60 at the third one, against the best in our country. And we're really good as a country at 76 kilos. It's not like there's you and the 7 dwarfs that have never wrestled before. You know, like there's high quality athletes there that have won a lot and probably saw this as, hey, due to life and nature, maybe she's a little vulnerable. This is the time to try to get that spot. And as you well know, the Olympic cycle, it's so important to be at the Worlds in 23 at an Olympic weight to place, and makes your path to the Olympics so much easier to manage than, you know, coming through the back, you know, the back door of the qualifying process. You said something else, and I want to ask Nate about this first, but then you said, you know, like you talked about Jordan Burroughs. And so like Nate, I would look at it like if I'm coaching a Jordan Burroughs or an Adeline Gray, you know, everybody's preparing for them, right? And so there's a million matches of these athletes. Like I had Medlin and Zane on this last week, and Medlin is, and you know, he's like a mad scientist. He's like, I've watched every match of Thomas Gilman that's ever been on the internet, you know, and you're probably right there with him. You guys are probably sharing links of the dark web of wrestling matches. So like how much of what you do for Adeline is, listen, if I was scouting against you, this is what these are your tendencies. I'm not asking you to change your tendencies, but these are the most likely counterattacks or ways to attack those tendencies. And here's what we need to do next. How much of that is going on?
I mean, I think more so now than prior, because, you know, she was getting back into wrestling. And so leaving the US Open, it was like, okay, what do we need to work on? What are the other, you know, tough ladies at her weight class going to try to pick her apart at? And I think the biggest thing was staying in a stance. You know, in the past when Adeline was heavier and she, you know, if somebody hit her legs, like she's very unorthodox, that she can sprawl and like run her feet over and do like some crazy positions that normally it's like, hey, we just got to stick to the basics and sprawl and front headlock and go behind. So that was a big thing, was just staying in a stance to be able to stop that space from, whether it's Kennedy or Diamond or, anybody at that weight class, because it became so tough over the last year that, what are they going to look for? Okay, well, now we just got to stay in a stance and be able to close the distance and then get to where Adeline's really good at. If they do shoot, we got to sprawl first and push off the hips and just really use the weight that we do have to stop that attack. And so I think now more so a little bit more, but really I think leading into Worlds, I'm guessing her opponents, I was telling Terry this the other day, they probably think like, again, like you just said, like, oh, this is her vulnerable time. But little do they know that, her mind is, she's so strong upstairs that, the body's going to be fine and she's going to be ready when she steps out there. So really it's just getting back to where Adeline wrestles great and working on those positions and, watching some film leading up to Worlds, but still focusing on her, when she's wrestling and she does what she does really good, she's unstoppable and she just needs to get to one takedown, and she's the queen of leg laces. Probably Sarah Hildebrandt right now would disagree, but so hopefully Sarah listens to this because we always joke about that. But that's really it. Like, how are we going to get to that first takedown? And then the rest is history,
Yeah, you two and Vito. Like, you guys could do a leg lace camp and that alone would be worth it. So for sure. So Adeline, it seems to me like from a distance that you being a role model, and I don't just mean winning, but the more you win, the bigger your platform is, the more people are going to listen to you. If you took third at the Worlds once, that'd be an amazing career for 99.99% of us. But when you've done what you've done, the platform, the voice, the gravity of you speaking carries more weight. I guess number one, how important is it for you to be a role model? And then two, I think we've all seen how far women's wrestling has come, like in the last 10, 15, 20 years, even the last 3 to 5 years. What is your, I think probably a simple goal is you want to leave wrestling better than you found it, which I think you've already done respectfully. But what tangible things would you be trying to do whenever you step away from the sport? What would you like people to, I guess, remember about you, and what would you like a continuation of what your life have been to be?
I think there's an environment right now within women's sports that there's excitement and prosperity, and there's just a lot going on. And we're hopefully riding this wave all the way with that. I just think you see more congruency with NBA and WNBA. You see companies stepping up and paying women, and there's just an equality that's happening. And it's time for that. It's time for women to be allowed to do sports and to have it be our careers. And I think for a long time, there's been this word girl that I've always kind of thought about, because Coach Terry called me a girl for a really long time. And I'm a woman, I'm a grown woman. And I struggled to have that word girl, because I think it kind of holds us back a little bit, because a girl doesn't have the same rights. She doesn't have the same abilities to be a full grown adult and make decisions. And so I think for a long time, our careers were just girls doing it. And now we have people who are growing up and being young women and being full grown women and being able to have voices and be powerful in this world and take up a lot more space. And so I think that's what I want for young women to realize, is that there can be more than just a girl in the sport. I think all of us start as young women and young girls in this sport, but there's a transition that has to happen the same way it does with young men. And I think we do a really good job in our culture of pulling young men into that responsibility of what it takes for them to be young men in this world and what it takes for them to take some responsibility on. And we need that same thing for women, teaching them to be gritty, teaching them to be powerful, teaching them to have time management skills to be able to be prosperous in their lives. And wrestling helps us do that. And so I think it's really an amazing transition that's happening. And with me being allowed to create this career that I have, where I got my undergrad, I got my master's done, I got married, I now have my children and my family, like, this is my life. This is no longer just my thing I did after college. This wasn't just my first career. This is my career. And this is something that I can call myself a professional athlete. I'm a professional athlete who's a full grown woman getting to live her life. And it's something that the men have been able to do for a very long time. And if you look at some of the women in the previous generation, they were still struggling to put those pieces together. And I think that I on this better platform, being able to stand and talk about living my life and continuing on, and not having this just be a pet dream of wanting to go to the Olympics, but having this be something that I can make my full career is special. And I think it's something that young women can look up to me and say, I can have this full life. I can make money. I can go on and have a house and a family and still come back and be able to be in this world as an athlete and as a woman. And so I think that transition is what I want to leave, is just young women and young girls knowing that they can come up and have a voice and become women in this sport. And that's there's room for us. There's space for us in this sport, and there's space for you to build those skill sets. Even if you never win a match, it's still building those skill sets and showing up to practice and learning how to do that. Because those skills I learned made my pregnancy easier and made me a better mom. And those are amazing to be able to say that. I mean, I think that's success. That's happiness. That's being able to experience the joyful moments with your kids and your family and have that be part of your life. And it's a special thing. And something I want to make sure we touch on is I was able to set some goals for coming back after pregnancy that were pretty lofty. I wanted to make it back for the US Open. I wanted to have my weight at this point. And because I set those lofty goals, and I built a support system where I was like, I need to be able to get more rest. And I pulled some people in so that they could watch my kids, so I could get a little bit of a nap in, so that I could still be up every few hours at night. And I was able to take some time and have someone watch the kids while I dedicated some time to my workouts. And I made sure that I had good food to eat and nutrition and hydration, and brought in a support system that allowed me to heal and allowed me to improve. And a lot of those other things that I think a lot of women struggle with when they come back from pregnancy kind of just fell into place because I was able to reach for these. It's kind of that reach for the stars, land among the moon kind of thing. I mean, it was pretty amazing to kind of forget about losing the baby weight and some of those other pieces that I think a lot of people end up stuck on, because I was trying to do something so big, such as getting back from the US Open 8 months after having kids, and just being able to have that goal and dream pulled me forward and allowed me to get my body in shape. It allowed me to put importance on not just my kids' lives and me being a good mom, but my health and happiness being important too. And I really think that's an important piece that we kind of miss a lot of the time with young women having babies.
I want to go back to the girls and the women thing, but I want to give you the opportunity, if there's any of those folks that, I think anybody who's ever accomplished anything in life has this support system, and a lot of times they go nameless. Is there anybody you'd like to specifically give their flowers to for, like you said, like coming over, babysitting, any of those people you want to give some shine to before I go circle back to the other thing?
I think it's a long list is the problem. I mean, definitely my parents, my sisters, all three of my sisters came out at some point to watch the twins, and babies, when there's two of them running two directions, there's not just one set of hands that are helping. So, I mean, Coach Michaela is what we're going to call her from now on, but Nate's wife was able to help us kind of manage the babies when we were at World Team Trials. Obviously my husband just, is such a believer in everything that I do. I'm sitting here like, I don't know if I can win. He's like, you'll be fine. You're going to win. And I'm just kind of understanding that he just has this faith and underlining belief that I'm going to figure it out and be able to accomplish whatever we set our goals to has been pretty awesome. So just a lot of people that have been able to have support and faith in me. I mean, Coach Nate, Geneva, I think the national team coaches here have all been very supportive and just allowing me to be fully Adeline in so many situations and finding my footing so I can win matches.
For sure. There's two things that popped into mind when you mentioned the girl versus woman thing. The first one was about 4 or 5 years ago. I did a podcast for track wrestling, and this was back when there was some controversy about who should get paid more to be at a match, Pat Downey or Sarah Hildebrandt, something like that. And I had Catherine Shai and Sarah and like 3 or 4 of these ladies on. And I remember at the time, this is when track and flow were separate. And track said to me, we're not going to put it up. And I said, why? And they said, because we didn't give Flo a chance to comment. I said, well, let's just call Flo. I mean, it seems like a fairly easy I to dot or T to cross. And that the power of the be there said no. The second thing, when Gary Abbott decided to move us over to USA Wrestling, for which I'm eternally grateful, the first thing he talked about to me, he said, I've watched your podcast. I like it. Make sure that women's wrestling, like from age U20 and up, is women. Juniors and cadets can be girls. U17 to 20 is sort of your choice, but do not do that. You're disempowering them, and you also shouldn't be calling 14-year-olds women. And he said something I thought that was, like everything Gary says, it's really, really smart. He said, just decide when you would call a boy and a boy a man, and do the same thing for women. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you this, as somebody who I'm sure at the course of, I'm not going to put my age out on Front Street, but a long time, has probably made that mistake. I would say for a lot of us, it's not conscious. We're not trying to do it. It's not an intent to denigrate or to belittle in any way. Sometimes it's just an honest mistake, but it is good to be reminded of it, because I'm a grown man. I wouldn't want to be called a boy, so your point is really well taken. I think there's a lot of people that are really good-hearted and just maybe don't even realize that that's offensive.
And some of it's an English problem. Like we say the word guys, but the equal to guys is gals, and we don't use the word gal in our colloquial language. Like it's just not a normal thing for us to say. Yeah. And so we just don't have enough words to describe women currently in our normal language. And so we do have to kind of push. And how I always word it to Terry, because Terry he doesn't want to call us guys. He's like, come in, girls. So we collectively, and I was a girl at one point, so it's not offensive. I'm not sad that I was a girl at one point, but I did mature into a grown woman. And when he uses the word woman to me, I feel empowered. And I think that's what I want people to just kind of think about. I'm not mad you called me a girl. I feel empowered and I feel powerful when someone says that I am a woman, because I am, and I've been able to grow into this adult woman and be a role model. And I think I should have the respect and language that kind of matches that.
Well, the world championships are not the boys and the girls, it's the men and the women's. So that's probably right there is, we can just go by those terms, I think, in general. So for, I guess, either one of you, Nate, I'll ask you first. You're so involved in this at so many levels, Oregon State as well. To me, as somebody that kind of looks at this stuff from a 50,000-foot view, and I'm not on the inside like you are, how good is the crop of U.S. women wrestlers right now? Because it seems like, I want to say we in the most loose term of we, and that I live in the United States and my podcast is on USA Wrestling, and that is the extent of my contribution. But we as a country are so good, it feels like, and not just at the senior level, but like at the U23 level, U20 level, U17 level. Like I just left junior duels and was on the mic for those finals. And I mean, yeah, they're going to get better, but the skill level of some of those young ladies, maybe that's the right term for juniors, young ladies, is really high. Mm-hmm. So as you see it, and then I'm going to ask Adeline if she's in it, but as you see it from a coach, what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show that, people like Sarah McMahon and Patricia Miranda and Katie Kriebel, who used to be Katie Downing, and Sally Roberts. I don't know if I mentioned that name. And I'm forgetting so many other, Marcy Van Dusen, Ofsoon, all these people that, came and kind of laid the bricks, and it was a really, really tough time. Like when we were at Captain's Cup, Terry was really great. They brought back all these ladies that had, retired and kind of been away from the sport. And at that time, it was really hard to stay involved because there wasn't opportunities and they didn't feel included. And so I think lately you've seen a lot of these ladies that, again, laid the bricks for a lot of these young ladies that are coming up and giving them these opportunities. So I think that's a shout out to Terry and to these ladies getting back involved. Because it's important, as males in the sport, the Dan Gables of the world and, Kendall Cross, all those people, like I love the history of our sport. And for the young ladies coming up, they know who Adeline Gray is because she's still competing, but they don't know who those other athletes are, and they need to know who they are and talk to them and be around them. So, that I think, obviously what Wrestle Like a Girl has been doing, Sally's crushing it. Joan Fulop, Allen, is getting all these different states that are sanctioned. So, I mean, that goes to show that how much the sport of women's wrestling has grown, because there are more opportunities. And like Adeline said, we have the WNBA and we have all these, the U.S. women's soccer team, I mean, is probably 10 times better than our men's team. And so the opportunities are just growing so much. There's more clubs. The growth of girls wrestling has grown, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands. I mean, you see it at Fargo, you see it all over the country. So, I mean, that's, I think, why it's gotten to the level that it is, right? Japan, we're always chasing Japan, but the cadets and juniors have won the world championships lately, and Jess Medina is doing an incredible job with them. But I would say the last thing is really, there's more women getting involved to coach. And one thing I've experienced as a male coaching women or girls, or who's ever at camp it may be, is they just want the same opportunities. They want to be loved and heard, and they wear their hearts on their sleeve, and they listen so much better than the boys or the men, because I think we have a lot of bad habits and it's hard to break. It's like being married, like if my wife tells me something, I won't remember it, but she'll remember it 10 years from now. So I don't know. I just think that it's in a very healthy spot, and it's only going to continue to be better because of people like Adeline and everybody that's come before her, to, Helen Maroulis, I can't forget about her, right? Like Olympic champion. And so it's just going to continue to grow and get better. And I hope that at the Division I level that women's wrestling grows and more programs get started. And so, yeah, sorry. I'm passionate about it. And for all the hard work that they put in, it's important to.
I think there's a big difference that happened in the last 5 years, where you're seeing some of these young ladies who have coaches that are really committing to them. And I don't think that's something that kind of my generation got. We were still kind of in that, okay, we'll now accept you kind of thing. We weren't fighting to be on the wrestling mat, but we didn't have that extra attention of those coaches who are willing to commit. And it's been amazing to see these women step onto a mat and have that support system and have elite coaching and have been elite coached for the last 5 years. And that's
Right.
adding to their success and the talent pool, I think, that's coming up. And it's just going to continue to get better as we get more and more people to buy in and support women in their goals of being athletes.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole podcast, and it'd probably be awesome just on women's wrestling. It reminds me, probably the most reclusive person I ever had on the show was Art Martori, and just that, he just doesn't do interviews. But I think anybody that knows anything about wrestling understands. Talk about a person that's genuinely had impact on the sport, right?
Yeah.
And he told this story about they were trying to figure out weight classes for women. And he said him and Trish Saunders, which is another one of those Mount Rushmore names that you guys are talking about, obviously, were literally just in the bleachers and just writing down weights. And A, so crazy, and B, talk about having power that those actually became the weights. I know Nate's a USA Wrestling Coach of the Year, and we're doing good on the pod, but if he and I write a bunch of stuff down, it's not just going to go B. We just can't write things into law. And then the other thing that I think will probably help women's wrestling as much of anything is collegiate, because there are storylines. Like we did weighing in this morning, we talked about how Gable Stevenson coming back to college, how much, because people don't like this phrase, but people root for the laundry. When somebody's a national champion, if they have a national champion at Oregon State this year, everybody in Oregon's probably going to root for them. And then when they go, I've been in Iowa, and there's 16,000 people for a dual meet, and then there's 4,000 people for the World Cup. And there's zero argument that the World Cup is higher quality wrestling than a dual meet, where half those people won't even be All-Americans, much less national champions or world champions. So I think as college creates depth, and then as those meets get bigger publicity, if you go back to hey, Dake's going to wrestle Taylor, those kind of things that we all know, those storylines, when those become women's storylines, that's when people are going to be oh, I followed Adeline because I'm from Missouri. She went to Mizzou, so I'm going to follow her throughout her career. I think a lot of people are catching up to you guys, Adeline, in terms of fanship, if that's a word, when you make a world team, because the college storylines are somewhat muted right now. So I'm hoping that is another thing that helps develop. And the other thing I think that's happening for you guys is, like you mentioned it, Adeline, but kids, as more and more Olympic level people are coaching kids clubs, and then boys and girls, which I think is the right term at that age, like these 6 to 12-year-olds, are both able to wrestle with an Olympic level coach. Then when they hit this USA wrestling circuit, they're so much more well prepared. And like I said, I was down there juniors this weekend in cadets or U14s, whatever the right term is for it. But just the young kids and the skill level so good. So I think we're about out of our time. I just have one super serious question for Nate. For people that want to support your twins on an NIL basis based on their appearance at the US Open. So for people that don't know, those two kids running around in singlets were Nate's. And a very reliable source told me that's been the second most watched video on the UWW website. So I don't know if that's the definition of viral. And if it is, I think it's viral in a good way. So you should just like send Venmo to @Nate Engel. Nate Engel, is that how it works?
Yeah, just go to my wife's Instagram and hit her up. But they got Adeline's kids right on their heels, and they're going to be much bigger than my twins. So they gotta start training now and really get some strength training. And I'm kidding, but yeah, that was an awesome moment. And I think too, like, just not to talk too long, but there was a really cool moment for me. And after Adeline had lost in the US Open, and my wife, she's very close with Adeline's family, and they kind of lock and make eye contact, and they have this emotional moment. And me being a male, I'm like, I don't know what's really going on. But from mom to mom, whether it was one baby or twins, it doesn't matter. But I thought that was really cool that, that's when I knew that, like, this is a family. Like, whatever Adeline's going through or we're going through, we talk about it. And so, yeah, it's really cool to have kids to grow up with somebody like Adeline and be able to, have them around her, especially being boys, like, to understand that women's wrestling is important. So when they get older, they have the same like-minded values that I do. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Nike was very, it probably didn't hurt their stock either, those two kids running around in those singlets. So
that was such a fun moment at the US Open.
Unbelievable, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, because it's such a serious tournament, and then that breaks out. And, like, it doesn't matter how wound, you could be warming somebody up for the finals, and it's a whole different moment. So, Adeline, I want to thank you for your time and wish you the best of luck for the Worlds and the rest of this quad. Nate, you're the man. I've known you forever. Appreciate you setting this up and coming on. Wish you the best of luck, both with Adeline and your senior level athletes and at Oregon State this fall.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll speak to y'all next week.